Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. First, the top stories. West African leaders converge on Accra as ECOWAS Commission celebrates 50th anniversary.
These three countries have been part of ECOWAS for almost 49 years. And only fair that if we are celebrating 50 years of ECOWAS, they are part of that celebration.
Burkina Faso's government falls, another coup attempt.
The intelligence services have monitored the maneuver that should come to fruition. According to the terrorist plot on Wednesday, April 16, 2025, in Assau follows the presidency of Faso by a group of soldiers recruited by the enemies of the nation.
Reactions trailed the departure of opponent from political formation in Guinea, and a new report alarms Nigeria's growing risk of climate change. Please stay tuned for details of the stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners within and outside the sub-region. I am Imo Edet.
And I am Sankule Janko.
As the regional bloc economic community of West African state, ECOWAS clocks 50 heads of state and leaders are convening for a two-day extraordinary summit to commemorate the anniversary of Commission. Attention is on the potential participation of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, three countries that have recently withdrawn from the bloc. In a gesture of reconciliation, Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has invited these breakaway states to participate in the ECOWAS Golden Jubilee. Leaders from across the sub-region are gathering not only to sign a treaty, but also to inspire a vision of a unified West Africa working together toward peace, prosperity and endless possibilities. WDL's Accra correspondent Nadi Detete reports.
A high-stakes regional meeting is set to take place in Ghana's capital, Accra, bringing together heads of state and government, as well as ministers and dignitaries from across West Africa. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria, who currently chairs the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State, is expected to attend alongside other development partners. The launch of ECOWAS at 50 and the Golden Jubilee logo, as well as the theme, will be major highlights of the event. The launch also marks the start of a year-long series of commemorative activities across all member states. Topping the agenda of the extraordinary session is the recent withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, now operating as the alliance of Sahelian states. Ministers are expected to prepare a detailed report on the issue for consideration by the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State. As the host country, President John Dramani Mahama has extended an invitation to the three nations. Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa says the invitation sent a strong message of peace and inclusion.
When President Mahama discussed with his colleagues that he wanted to invite the AES heads of state, he did not face any opposition, which is really a good sign that there is that genuine commitment and desire for ECOWAS to be fully reintegrated.
Meanwhile, the head of research at the West African Network for Peace Building, Dr. Festus Kofi Obin, says re-engaging the Sahel states is crucial.
These three countries have been part of ECOWAS for almost 49 years. And only fair that if we are celebrating 50 years of ECOWAS, they are part of that celebration. Important that despite the fact that they are out of ECOWAS, we continue to extend invitations to them to some of these events to ensure that we continue to engage them to come back to the original body.
Established on May 28, 1975, ECOWAS has worked for 5 decades to promote economic integration, political stability, and peace across the region. For WDR, Nadi Ditete, Accra.
Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, authorities announced that they had foiled another coup attempt. A statement delivered by the Minister of Security on Monday night revealed that the operation was orchestrated from Côte d'Ivoire. It reportedly involved several Burkinabe military officers, both in the country and in exile in Abidjan. According to the authorities, the final assault was planned for Wednesday, April 16th. Augustine Colley has the details in this report.
Several military officers are mentioned in this statement read by the Minister of Security. In particular, Lieutenant Abdurrahman Bari, a deserted member of the military justice system, is presented as the mastermind of the operation. He allegedly contacted soldiers and volunteers for the defense of the fatherland with a view to plotting a coup.
The intelligence services have monitored the maneuver that should come to fruition. According to the terrorist plot on Wednesday, April 16, 2025, in Assau follows the presidency of Faso by a group of soldiers recruited by the enemies of the nation.
According to the authorities, the operation was jointly prepared in Ouagadougou and Abidjan by serving officers and others in exile, particularly Côte d'Ivoire. And in preparation for the April 16 assault, information was reportedly given to terrorists to plan attacks.
Sensitive information has been passed to terrorists in order to intensify attacks against combat forces and civilians with the aim of inciting revolt against the authorities. Additionally, other strategies have been developed to mislead intelligence services in order to prompt them to make mass arrests within the defense and internal security forces, hoping to create frustrations and a sense of fear.
According to Minister Sanya, the mastermind was imprisoned along with several other individuals. He announced that the Burkinabe intelligence services would continue their investigations into the coup attempt.
A report by WDR's Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba, voiced by Augustine Colley.
Well, crossing over to Benin, a political reaction have emerged following an attack by unidentified armed men that resulted in the death of nearly 10 soldiers. Opposition political parties have condemned the attack, which occurred in the northern part of the country, and urged President Patrice Talon's government to work together with neighboring countries to effectively combat terrorism. Abdullah Hassan report.
The opposition party, the Democrats, is calling on the Beninese authorities to establish a joint force with Benin's neighboring countries, including Nigeria, Togo, Niger, and Burkina Faso. This initiative, according to the opposition political party, could be an effective way to combat terrorism. The party of former President Boniai also called on the government of Benin to engage in urgent and sincere consultations with neighboring countries. In the process, the Beninese political movement, Liberal, through a press release, condemned the latest terrorist attack in Benin, which left 8 dead. According to Regis Hungbe, a lecturer of geopolitics, international relations and strategic communication, the proposal of the opposition political parties is salutary.
The context of the security crisis currently facing Benin, especially with the attacks last July, is indeed concerning, in that Benin has once again lost a number that remains to be established. And on this, it is undeniable that beyond the emotion, which is normal and legitimate, we must quickly have all the forces that are concerned with the separate interest of the nation, which is trying to protect Benin, come together. At the same time, we must react through our strategies. So yes, indeed, it is not the common elements or mechanisms that are lacking.
Another reaction came from Nisefore Jojone Soglo. The former Beninese president denounced on his Facebook page, and I quote, "a cowardly, barbaric and unbearable attack," end of quote.
Abdullah Hassan voiced that report farden by Aziz Adam Sule in Cotonou.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Meanwhile, in Guinea, major political parties are losing their leadership as several have recently aligned themselves with the ruling military regime. The leaders of these parties argue that they must not sideline themselves from the reconstruction process. These departures have been largely viewed as inconsequential by the former ruling party, the RPG, as well as the UFDG of Cellou Dalein Diallo. However, political analysts warn that these shifting allegiances could significantly weaken the affected parties in future elections. Political parties like the Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea and RPG Rainbow now see their leaders supporting the ruling military, a situation that doesn't worry these political parties. As a reminder, several of these party executives were recently appointed to positions of responsibility by General Mamadi Doumbouya.
Elsewhere in Togo, the government has approved a new action plan for its national decentralization policy covering 2025 to 2034. Government officials validated the plan on April 15 in Kara, With the new strategy, Lome seeks to improve local governance and make local authorities key drivers of economic growth. Francis Boniface has the details in this report.
The major actions outlined in this decentralization plan are organized around 4 priority areas: strengthening local governance, improving the financing and autonomy of local authorities, effectively transferring state powers, and promoting citizen participation in managing local affairs. The plan also focuses on 3 main strategies to mobilize over 51 billion CFA francs for the next 5 years and aims to create local, inclusive and efficient governance by funding projects with a strong community impact. According to Gomado Kwame, the minister in charge of regional planning, this national document supports the government's vision for balanced development across all regions. This 5-year budgeted action plan is based on an assessment of decentralization process that began in Togo in 2016. After evaluating the progress made and the challenges that remain, local stakeholders came together to identify opportunities to effectively meet the needs of the population by 2034. As part of the Decentralization and Good Governance Program, the Togolese government seeks to enhance the capabilities of local actors and promote balanced territorial development through a concerted strategy and concrete actions. Some of these initiatives may receive financial and technical support from German Cooperation Agency, GIZ.
That was Francis Boniface filing that report.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. West African leaders converge on Accra as ECOWAS Commission celebrates its 50th anniversary. Burkina Faso's government foils another coup attempt. Reactions after the departure of opponents from their political formation in Guinea. Still ahead, a new report alarms Nigeria's growing risk of climate change. We also have the press review, a guest interview, and sport news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Now, a new report has issued a stark warning on Nigeria's growing vulnerability to climate change, with experts predicting there are consequences if urgent action is not taken. The Nigeria Climate Impact Outlook, launched in Abuja, highlights the country's increasing exposure to extreme weather events and environmental degradation linked to rising global temperatures. WDR's Usman Omar was at the launch and filed this report.
The newly released Nigeria Climate Impact Outlook paints a troubling picture of the country's climate future. From intensified heat waves to shrinking water resources and deteriorating livelihoods, the report signals that Nigeria is edging dangerously close to a climate tipping point. Climate experts, researchers and policymakers gathered in Abuja on Monday for the launch, urging immediate and sustained national efforts to mitigate the looming crisis. The report notes that Nigeria, despite its low contribution to global emissions, is among the most at-risk countries in sub-Saharan Africa. One of the experts at the event, Felicia Dairo, program manager at the Center for Journalism in Innovation and Development, emphasized the role of media and civil society in amplifying climate voices and pushing for stronger accountability mechanisms.
We haven't felt heat wave as much as we are feeling at the moment. So we need to continue to have this conversation about climate change and its impact, not just on us, but also on our economy.
The report recommends an overhaul of Nigeria's climate adaptation strategies, stressing the need for climate-resilient infrastructure, early warning systems, and inclusive public policies. As the nation braces for yet another hot season, stakeholders say the time for talking is over and the time for decisive action is now. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Omar reporting from Abuja.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
We now head to Monrovia as we join Abraham Parker for the newspaper review.
Welcome to the Tuesday's edition of Press Review for Liberia's capital, Monrovia. We begin with the front-page Africa newspaper with this headline: "We need a clear ruling. Bishop Kotu Brown, former president of the Liberia Council of Churches, urges Supreme Court to clarify a bit of information to resolve horse impasse." He thinks that Liberians, including members of the Supreme Court bench, have the responsibility to keep the peace or to keep Liberia stable. Dangerous precedents. Alternative National Congress raises alarm over National Elections Commission contractor replacements ahead of NIMA by-election. We move over to the Daily Observer with this first headline. No politics in fabric rewriting at PHP. Police in high alerting NIMA as senatorial by-election takes place today. Liberians reflect on Pope Francis' legacy, and World Bank reaffirms support for early childhood education and women's empowerment. We move to the Inquirer newspaper. LTA announces week-long nationwide internet outage. Liberia's ambassador to France unveils investment attraction brochure in Paris. Openness Heritage newspaper. Boaka mourns the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis. NIMA decides who replaces Senator Prince Johnson. Openness is the newspaper. MCSS corruption saga deepens. Integrity Group proposes administrative action. Expected decision, Supreme Court to avoid interference. And our last stop is the In Profile Daily. Liberian musical superstar CRC urges police to focus on crimes, not music. That does it for this Tuesday's edition of Press Review. It's back to you in studio, and thanks so kindly for listening.
Many thanks, Abraham Parker, with a newspaper review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
And the death of Pope Francis on Monday at the age of 88 sparked deep emotion in Africa. Political and religious figures paid tribute to a figure who worked to consolidate peace throughout the world. Between 2013 and 2025, during his pontificate, he made 5 trips to Africa. He denounced corruption and economic colonialism and called for the protection of migrants. The pontiff distinguished himself geopolitically, but what will be the challenge for his future successor? Our guest is Father Peter Lopez, Director, Gambia Pastoral Institute.
Now, first of all, I think not only the church, but the whole world is saddened by the death of Pope Francis. You will recall in 2013, when he became Pope, the first thing he did was to show us the kind of Pope that he was going to be by taking the name Francis after St. Francis of Assisi. And St. Francis of Assisi, is a saint who is well known for option for the poor. And mercy also, mercy for those who are marginalized and those who are at the periphery of life. So from the very beginning, he gave us the hint that his papacy was going to be a little bit different. First of all, he didn't live in the Apostolic Palace. He decided to live in an apartment in Santa Marta, and that's where he died. So coming in as a pope, he is well known, first of all, in my own thinking. He's a pope for those who are less fortunate in life, and that is depicted in the many places that he went. Just before he died, on Thursday, Holy Thursday, he was at the prison. Usually he will go to the prison there in Rome to wash the feet of the prisoners during the Mass of the Lord's Supper. So he was really a pope who gave ears to those who were less fortunate, to migrants. In a very special way, the documents that he wrote, if you look at the document that he wrote, especially on the care of the environment and, things that people hardly will give a listening ear to. That was what interested Pope Francis.
Well, would you say that gave the connection between the late Pope and the black continent, the African continent? You talked about his interest in environment, his interest in migrant and, opening the doors for all. You talked about his concerns for the poor and the marginalized.
Yeah, he gave a preferential treatment to the African continent in a special way. He wrote a document about the African continent, if you can remember, Afriche Munus. Afriche Munus, that document spoke about this continent that has so much. He talks about the potential that the continent has, and that the continent has potential and is a force to be reckoned with. And the visits that he made, he came to West Africa, to Central Africa, South Africa. During his short tenure. Pope John Paul II, St. Pope John Paul II spent 25 years as a pope and was able to go to far more countries than he did. But, if you look at 2013 to, let's say, 2015, cardinals, the number of cardinals we have there will be there at the conclave. This was all he's doing. So he really, again, gave the African continent, because you see, if we are talking about option to the poor, the poorest continent is Africa. So he really listened to Africans and made cardinal seats in dioceses that were not even cardinal seats. So his concentration on the African continent is really phenomenal.
Well, Father Lopez, there have been concerns and talks are flying around, especially with the fact that Africa may have the opportunity at that position. We've seen the cardinals from Guinea and Ghana now headlining discussions, the possibility of them or of Africa producing at least a pope. Do you see that happening?
Let me put it this way. It's only God who knows. But let me tell you, we have prominent cardinals there who will be in the conclave. Cardinal Peter Turkson of Ghana, known figure, not only in Africa, to deliver lectures. So he's also well known in the Americas. He's well known in Europe. Of course, he resides in the Vatican. He's a secretary in one of the dicasteries there in Rome. Now, talk about Cardinal Sarah. Cardinal Robert Sarah has written many books. One of the most prominent one is on silence. And he is well known, especially during the COVID, because he was the cardinal prefect of the dicastery that looked after the liturgy of the Roman Catholic Church. And he is well known also among his peers, among his colleagues there in Rome. So these are two forces going for the African continent. Well, if God wills, we can. But you will never know. There are also other prominent cardinals from other continents. But these are two figures that are well known, not only in the Africa. They are Africans, yes. Cardinal Sarah is from West Africa. He's not far from us here. He comes from Guinea. He's from Conakry. And then Peter Turkson from Ghana. Maybe the one from Nigeria because of age. Yes. Now he's of age. But these are wonderful cardinals who can possibly become popes, and that would be great for this continent that has, I think, the highest number of Catholics now, and growing is found in the African continent. So it will be a boost if an African becomes a pope. The faith will just spring. As an African speaking to you, I will be more than delighted to see an African pope.
Father Peter Lopez, Director, Gambia Pastoral Institute.
Well, in the sport news, so much is happening. The Confederation of African Football CAF is held its draws yesterday. And Sankule will telling us more with the start. Sankule.
Absolutely, you're right, Imam, because the Confederation of African Football, CAF, on Monday conducted the draw for the CAF African School Football Championship Ghana 2025 ahead of the tournament, which will kick off tomorrow, Wednesday. Accra's University of Ghana Stadium is hosting the third edition of the CAF African Schools Championship Finals, where 8 nations in both boys and girls under 15 age categories will contest the finals between 23 to 26 April 2025. So the official draw, which was conducted by CAF legends Asamoah Gyan of Ghana and Clementine Toure of Cote d'Ivoire, line up a number of exciting group stage fixtures. And of course, Imo, tell us about those fixtures.
Well, in the girls under 15 draw, hosts Ghana headline an interesting Group A, where they will be against Morocco, the all powerful Morocco, Benin and Malawi. Champion South Africa began their title defense in a tough Group B against Uganda, DR Congo, and of course, Ancules, the Gambia. The boys on the 15 draw produced equally exciting fixtures in both the groups. Host Ghana are drawn against Uganda, South Africa, and Algeria. Group B comprises defending champions Tanzania together with Senegal, debutants Cote d'Ivoire, and DRC. A tough one there, Sankule, to be.
It's a tough one, but it's a very interesting tournament, Imo, I'll tell you this, because this tournaments, the football championship bring together young boys and girls under 15. You have this where
that's the way to go, Sankule.
That's the way to go, because for CAF, under Patrice Motsepe's leadership, he's trying to invest so much into grassroots football. Yeah. So bringing these, youngsters together every year, to stage a tournament for him is a way of tapping the next generation, the next Drogbas, Asamoah Gyan, no Sadio Mane,
And being a billionaire himself, he has a lot of money to pump into it privately, even if CAF is for dragging. He does that on his own.
And that's a good point, because when it was first staged, his foundation, the Motsepe Foundation, spent millions of dollars, invested millions of dollars into this tournament. And so far, thousands of school children actually participating since its inception.
Well, in football, Sankule, I also hope that we will see the African Athletic Federation make this kind of move to bring up athletes, sprinters, people who can run marathon for the continent. The same way we're seeing in football.
We are not so much good with marathon. Long distance is not for West Africa. Sprint, of course, yes. We've seen the likes of Lokotu in Ivory Coast. We've seen a lot of sprinters. Of course, recently Gambia's Gina Bars. We've seen a lot of sprinters coming from the region, but for marathon, is of course Kenya,
cross our fingers.
Ethiopia, and other countries, but not so much from this part of the world. Indeed. But of course, what do you make of the under-20? Because we've seen that a draw has been made, and then Senegal will hope to defend their under-20.
Well, we look
because
forward to
they did so poorly in the Africa Cup of Nations under-17.
I think maybe a wake-up call for the young Lions. I don't know how they are called. They're under-20. To be a wake-up call because now there are no underdogs. No more underdogs when it comes to football, whether from whatever level at the
I agree because leading up to build up to this 20 African under-17, Senegal were actually the hot favorite, but they did so poorly. They exited in the quarterfinals.
Exactly, we have to go. We will continue. We'll talk till the bottom of the hour. That's it on Sport News. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to the technical team being led by Mustafa Sek. Do interact with us on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WADR News. I am Imo Edet.
And I am Sankule Janko.
Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 90.